he took me to meet Nana Sapong, the Agogo Hini.
Agogo Hini, Sapong.
Yes, who will be celebrating his 45th year on the stool in March. So I will be in Ghana in March, come rain, shower, or whatever. Even if they bring me on a stretcher, I will be there to celebrate with Nana.
Yeah.
Then there was a man. Sometimes he was rough in the country. His name was Bafo Okotu.
Bafo
linguist to Santahini, the Tumbo warrior, who was like an uncle to me. You know, Santahini took very good care of me and Dr. Jeffries. We were family. Even the Santahini's present, his mom was like my auntie.
Okay.
And the priest who taught me a lot of what I know, you know, and she was Nana Afuasa Afriye. At that time, she was the chief fetish priest for Santahini and the Santahini before. And she lived to be more than 100 before she fell and bumped her head and had to go home. So the other man who have guided me well is Nana Kwabena and Getsia the Fifth of Esokado. That's my little brother and my king. So I spent a lot of time working in Ghana through the years. I'll stay away from my political close friends because that can get you. You know,
it's an election year.
I did get to meet the current president when he was running the first time and he lost. He ran his campaign out of my hotel in Cape Coast because
who's that?
Our current president, Akufo-Addo.
Okay, Nanado. Okay.
Yeah, and I met Nana. We spent the whole evening along with my godfather, you know, who passed, who sold me the Sana Lodge in Cape Coast. So me and my group, we owned the Sana Lodge Hotel, Cape Coast.
Okay, what's the name of the hotel?
What's
the name of the hotel?
Sana Lodge.
Okay.
Even we're going through financial crisis now, but we'll come out of it by the time this pandemic resides somewhat. So Ghana has been a model in many, many ways for the rest of Africa.
Okay.
You know, Kwame Nkrumah, though we may have problem with some members now and others, but even those who criticize him is using much of his methods. Like leader, you make mistakes, and he made some, but he brought us a lot of critically good ideas on how to establish the state. I would give him one criticism, that he didn't lean close enough to the indigenous culture as the ideology of state. And and maybe he should have married an Ashanti woman instead of an Egyptian woman. And a lot of the problems wouldn't have happened, you know. I understood why he did it. He was trying to unite the North and the rest of Africa. And Abdul Nasser was certainly a revolutionary. And Abdul Nasser was a Nubian and not an Arab. So I understood what he was trying to do. But maybe Bafo Okotu wouldn't have gone so hard against him and end up in prison, you know, if he had married an Ashanti woman.
Yeah, that would have been, it's true. It's true. Rollins married an Asante woman. So
yes. And Rollins, you know, while we are on the air, since I like to tell the former presidents, you know, all of us in North America sent our regards and sympathy for the loss of his beautiful mother, you know, and we knew that how close he was to his mom. We did get to see some of the funeral on the internet over here.
Okay. Yes, so that was just about a week, I think, within the last week.
Last Friday.
Yes.
So to my brother, who know me well, and I know him well.
Wow.
Our hearts and spirits are with you and Nana, and all will be well. The ancestors are now in charge, and she'll finish their journey, and she'll be in her village waiting for you one day, waiting for me one day to come, you know.
Wow.
So,
Professor, I when I was in school at Kwabena and Marie University, as an engineering student, I remember there was this group, Black engineers. I was a typical Ghanaian, was interested in studying and going, you know, being involved in religious activities as well. I didn't pay much interest in Black engineers. I just wanted to pass the exam. Then later, after school, I saw that those people who paid attention had better understanding of history, particularly with engineers and what they contributed to the engineering discipline, the history of it. Because the main course was very silent on the contribution of Africa or Africans.
Yeah.
And it's not only in engineering, it's almost everywhere. So a typical engineer or a typical Ghanaian graduate, I remember in junior secondary school, but I could not link it to my development. I saw it as, just go to school, learn something, pass. But later, when I traveled and was doing second degree, then I saw how much I didn't know, even in terms of Africa and in terms of Ghana, in terms of what I had to know to stand with, and be able to come out as somebody who knew something beyond what the Europeans knew about Africa. So then I started to show interest in history. So what I want you to lecture us is, why is African history important, and why is it not so much openly added to a lot of the education all across Africa?
Let me read something to you that was written by Nana Kwabena and Ketsia, and this is an extraordinary book. The title of the book is African Culture in Governance and Development.
African Culture in Governance and Development.
Nana Kwabena and Ketsia the fifth of Esukado.
Okay.
And 800 pages that will make you not set this book down. And of course, I wrote the foreword to the book for my brother.
Okay.
So I want to read a passage that he has here in the book. It says, the situation where in an African university, African philosophy and African arts and culture are studied in the ghetto of an African studies program, while European philosophy and European-style arts and culture reign in the philosophy and arts department. Imagine an African university where only European languages are taught in the department of modern languages, as if the African language that are being spoken in town and on campus are not modern language too. Imagine an African university where the departments of anthropology, sociology, economics, political science, etc., are devoted exclusively to the European version of these disciplines. Imagine an African university where the humanities taught are the European humanities, where the dominant literature taught is European literature, but with some of its African imitation tagged on. Imagine an African university where African medicine and African agriculture are not part of what is taught in the Department of Medicine and Agriculture. Imagine an African university whose journalism school is a bastion of American journalism doctrines and whose education department is inculcating American educational philosophies and techniques, such as a university does not qualify, or such a university does not qualify as an African university. It is merely an outpost in Africa of an American and European academy perpetuating its colonial and imperialist ideals. And so that's where we have to start. And I wrote a little piece that I like to tell people. Ancestors are your pedigree. You learn your pedigree from your history. If people define themselves by referring to their origin, we are the best of our ancestors' genes. We are the latest version of our ancestors. We are the highest tech version of our ancestors. Our children are the best of our ancestors' genes, the latest version and the highest tech model. When we understand that, then we'll start saying, when we are studying other people's guidance and philosophies and religion, We are worshiping the ancestors of our murderers, the ancestors who committed genocide against us, the ancestors who trampled our culture, burnt our village, stole our natural resources, enslaved our people, and colonized our people. Those are the ancestors we are trying to emulate and imitate. Then for God's sake, we're going to do those same things to one another. And we're doing it all over the continent, all over America. So we have to be very clear when we talk about African culture, because culture is the centerpiece. The world of traditional African society is a totality, and I wrote this one, a whole. Its foundation is nothing other than the material conditions within which the people create and recreate their lives. For me to think of a turtle, let's take a turtle. The turtle, if you take him and confuse him and put him in a cage with rabbits all of his life, will study only rabbit philosophy, rabbit heritage. But the turtle will never be a rabbit, no matter how much he imitates the rabbit. And thus the Africans have to deal with history. We have to start with the invasion of our continent. We didn't invade anybody. We didn't go and take their people and enslave them in our lands. We didn't take their natural resources from them. We shared our civilizations with them. I don't care what history book you read, you will not find an occasion of a civilization in Europe. The closest thing they've got is Greece. And nearly everything in Greece is borrowed from Northeast Africa. So they steal Egypt so that we won't see the theft. But Egypt is as black now as it was then in terms of its creation. The people who sit there are Arab cousins. They're invaders. They're Arabs, Turks, Greeks, Roman, Eastern Europeans. They're not African. They did not build that civilization. And one in Ghana don't have to go very far. If you go to Ga, the Ga Adangbe community, the Ga community, you will see Osiris on their fishing boat. You will see the god of Egypt, Khepra, on their fishing boat. They will talk about the Nubian, out of which they came in their journey to the west. So you don't have to go far to see that we built Egypt and we owned it. We got driven out by the Muslims and the Turks and the Arabs and the Greeks and the Romans. But it doesn't change history. So when you go into the museums, and it's always funny, I go to Egypt all the time. All of the mummies are black. So how do you look at all these black faces and say this is not a black civilization? If the leaders are black, then the people are black. So I went there to come to where we have to come.
Okay.
We have been under attack for centuries. You've got to count the Greek attack, the Roman attack, the Persian attack, the Hittites attack, the Hyksos attack, all in the BC. We fought most of them off. But by the time we get into AD with the Romans, and then the children of the Greeks, who we call the Arabs, and their newfound religion called Islam, we were in for trouble.
Yeah.
And we are still in for big trouble because of that. If one does not know the history, one would not know that it was the Muslims coming out of the Ottoman Empire that was running a slave trade system in Africa for 1,500 years before the transatlantic slave trade.
1,500 years.
1,500 years. The trans-Saharan slave trade, the trans-Indian Ocean slave trade is in the hands of the Turks and the Arab Muslims. They devastated Africa even before the European Christian got there. When the European Christian came, he simply tapped into a system that was already in place for 1,500 years. You understand me? People like say, oh, your own people sold you. Maybe we had, and we know we had some corrupt people, but they were minimal. Nobody tells the story. You want to talk about, like they say, the Ashantis was involved in the slave trade. So my cousin John was a drug dealer. Did that make my family the drug dealers? You know?
No.
So
you know what you just said.
When they say that about the Asantes, which is a very young kingdom in time. But when the Asante kingdom came into being, the transatlantic slave trade was just about over. And so they don't even talk about the great Bansu, Asante Bansu, who marched down to the coast, decimated the white man, took the Elmina slave dungeon from them, and threw them in the ocean. So tell that story. Tell all of the stories of the wars we fought, not to let our people be taken away. But if you don't know that history, then you make false assumptions on relationships. So we must study the history. We must study the history to understand the many wars. If you go into northern Ghana, there are houses up in the areas near Paga, where the only opening is on the roof, and they only have slits in the wall to shoot their bow and arrows. The house was designed to defend themselves against the foreign slave traders. The door to the compound was only 2 feet high. You had to crawl to get into the courtyard. So if you were the enemy, I could take your head. So when you see a people leave that you can go and visit now, and you see a people leave that, then you see the legacy of how they fought against slavery. You can go to Seliga. Yes, Seliga was the biggest market, okay? But at the same time, all around Seliga, we fought great wars to free our people. That's just one occasion. So history will erase the white man's mystery and let us learn the truth about
history will liberate the white man's mystery.
Mystery, yes. History will erase the white man's mystery.
Wow.
When we think, when we pour libation, and I remember Bafo was so strong when he was the linguist for Santa Hene. Once the libation had been poured, it was at a fair at the stadium. I don't know whether it was the day. I was there once to see the golden stool come out, which is one of the most magnificent occasions on the planet Earth. People there's nothing like that, But on this day, the Bafo had already poured libation. So when the president was a little bit late because of traffic, and someone suggests, maybe we have to pour libation for the president, Bafo said, libation is done. The law says it's done here at this time in this way. The president can take his seat. I mean, and the president did not feel offended because he knew culture reigned.
Which president was that?
My good brother Jerry, who I
love.
Yes.
Thank you.
One of our great presidents. And one day, I know they've always been rifts between folks, but one day history would tell us that despite some of the injuries that comes with all wars or political takeover, people will die and some will be unjust and some will be just. But you've got to know who put you back on the path. And I believe that man put us back on the path, and that's why Ghana is where she is today, ahead of the clan in all of Africa right now. No matter what nobody say, no one can compete with the stability, with the educational rising of Ghana. And if it wasn't for the World Bank and International Monetary Fund and the American forcing us to submit to their valuation of our currency, we'd be one of the most economically solvent country in Africa right now. So
can you break that part down for me?
Yeah, let me go back. There was a point when the CD was almost 1-to-1 to the American dollar, only a few decades ago.
Yes.
Now the CD is 5+ something to the American dollar because they came in with their austerity plan and says you will be able to get money from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, but you have to allow them to reconstruct your currency. So now you're going to devalue my currency. Now, I got the gold in my ground. I got the manganese in my ground. I got the bauxite in my ground. I got the diamonds in my ground. I got the oil in my lake. But my currency get devalued. You who have none of this, your currency reigns supreme over me. I'm the only one that got things to back up my currency. And so we have to back away. The young people, the electorate have to tell the politicians, sit down and renegotiate these arrangements. Donald Trump, as evil as that old boy is, he showed you that he can break any treaty he wants. He broke the NAFTA treaty with Canada and said you will renegotiate. He broke
That's right.
the NAFTA treaty with Mexico and said you will renegotiate. He broke the Southeast Asian treaty and said you will renegotiate. So why can't we renegotiate these colonial treaties and arrangements when a gun is being held to our head to sign them? We have more rights and reason, justifiably, to renegotiate every single treaty. Our cocoa treaty, our gold treaty, and for God's sake, that 10% oil treaty, the bauxite treaty, the manganese treaty. How can we have all this wealth and our college students is hawking on the streets selling plastic goods from China? We've got to rearrange this whole thing. We've got to revisit it. I'm not blaming anyone in government. What Britain and what the Western colonial powers have done is use the world banking system, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and the United Nations to cripple us economically no matter how wealthy we are. And they control this by having us still use their filthy, and I call it filthy, colonial curriculums in most of our schools. And so we have to raise the question. If I tell the story of